All right, so we're going to do a deck tech. That's the number of swamps in the deck. So this is the mono black control deck that I've been playing. So here's your lands. There's 26 of them. Yeah, 26.
Yeah.
I like Mobilized District.
But
I might play 2 of those, actually.
question was, isn't that the 20th swamp?
It is, actually. There was supposed to be 20 swamps, and I own 20 white-bordered swamps.
What happened to the 20th
I
one?
can't find the 20th.
Okay.
It's probably in a deck somewhere, and I have no idea which deck.
Okay.
So I threw in 1 Mobilized District, and I actually really like that in the deck, because it gives you a win condition.
Would you go down another swamp, or would you cut one of the other lands?
Probably a swamp.
Okay.
Maybe a Radiant Fountain, depending on the metagame.
Gotcha.
Obviously, the Radiant Fountains, they don't cost a whole lot to run 3 of them, and the life gain is pretty relevant against aggro decks. You really just need to buy a couple turns, and gaining 2 life buys you a turn in a lot of cases. And then 3 castles, I don't like running a 4th because, again, if you're playing against a lot of aggro, you probably just don't even want to see the castle in the beginning of the game.
Because you're going to lose too much life.
So it's kind of like the number of cards is like 2 if you maybe want to see it, 3 if you want to see one of them, and you run 4 if you want it every game is kind of my logic. So I run 3 because I usually want to see 1.
Seems pretty fair.
So then, let's see. I guess all the 2 drops are here. So we've got 3 Heartless Acts and 3 Eliminates for removal spells. And then 2 Agonizing Remorses, or 4 Agonizing Remorses. It's a 2 drop for Hand Disruption. And there's a lot of things you just can't deal with. You can't deal with Embercleave if it hits the battlefield. You can't deal with enchantments. That's really about it. You can't deal with high casting cost creatures unless you get into like the Murderous Rider or the high end. So a lot of times, like you might want to just like against Craig, I would just take a Winota because I can't deal with it, very many other ways.
It's a good thing. It also has some graveyard interaction.
Yeah, so you can also exile like an Uro or something, which no one's playing it here right now. So,
but that's just right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see a lot of that, right?
Yeah. And granted, we have 4 people playing.
Sure.
For FNM,
Okay.
So
a lot of Uro in the meta.
Yeah, everyone's playing a row. So then I have 4 Maze Mind Tomes, and I was running 3 because I only opened 4 in my case, and I ordered the 4th online. So the first week I played it, I was only running 3, and I wanted it every game.
Yeah.
If you can play it on turn 2 and control your draw step, it's awesome. And then later in the game, it's just a cantrip. And then the 4 life is super relevant against aggro decks.
This seems like one of those decks that's like, you want to hit your land drops every turn and have a removal spell every turn?
Yep.
Right?
So drawing extra cards late game is super relevant. I am usually taking 1 out against aggro decks, though.
Too slow?
It's a little too slow if you draw multiples. So you do want to see 1, you just don't want to see 2.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. So then we have 4 Murderous Riders because you're playing black.
Sure.
And it kills everything.
Yeah. I was saying, like, kills everything.
Everything.
And it gives you some life if you're, off the castle.
One thing that a lot of people overlook, and I'm guilty of this too, is it's a 3-mana 2/3 with lifelink. Against the low to the ground 1/1/2/2 aggro deck, you can just play it. You don't have to use it as a removal spell.
Right.
But the whole idea with Adventure is that it's built-in card advantage. So a lot of times you do want to use Swift End and follow it up by casting it. There's 3 Ritual of Soot, mass removal against aggro decks. And then 4 Lemon Simulacrum, which is why I call them Lemon, because I like to intentionally pronounce cards wrong. So we call them Lemon.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just really like this card because it's like the ultimate mid-range card. It replaces itself and it fetches a land, and that gets you to your late game. And it's really fun with Dread Presence if you time them right. So the next card, Dread Presence. Didn't really see a lot of play, and I don't know why Mono Black is viable. I think maybe it's just because we have multiple removal spells now that we didn't have before.
There's a lot more now, right?
And unfortunately it rotates, but I'm hoping there's something in Zendikar that's similar.
Maybe a
landfall creature that does something similar, or maybe a Swampfall creature. Maybe they make a new mechanic.
This should have just said,
land.
This should have been Swampfall.
Yeah.
Like
they'd have to make a triggered ability for every single land type, though. But really cool card. You play a swamp, you get a modal choice of a triggered ability: either draw a card, lose a life, or shoot something and gain 2 life. So you can take out a 4 toughness creature if you have a land for the turn and a lemon for the turn. So that's kind of fun. Or if you play a Massacre Worm and reduce their toughness by 2, which is how I got around Craig's pro black creature.
Okay.
One of them.
Yep.
And then Dread Presence, play a land, and you could shoot it for the other 2 if you needed to. So there is ways to kill higher toughness creatures. And then we have 2 Lilianas, which obviously is a good game ender and removal on a stick. And then 2 Eugenes. Unfortunately, I don't have matching artwork.
No, but I do like that you didn't pick the new set for the second one, and that you did pick the Fate Reforged one. I thought maybe you would just go set
I gotta
symbol.
pick the Ugin's Fate, and then I really like the way that card looks. So I'm actually trying to pick up like three more of those.
The Baller Eugene?
Yeah, the Whale Eugene.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the main deck. You can deal with just about everything except enchantments and artifacts.
Okay.
So you just have to kind of play around those. We have the sideboard here.
Sorry,
you didn't leave me room for the sideboard,
I didn't leave you room for the
Garrison.
sideboard.
Man.
Yeah, I'm a horrible person here.
So we'll just move this away. All right. So sideboard, I got 4 Duresses, and that goes in against. Well, here it was going to go in against control, but no one's playing it.
Sure.
So the flash deck, you put in the Duresses so you can get around the counter spells.
Those couple with Agonizing Remorse pretty well, because you could duress on one, Agonizing Remorse, whatever you
Clear your way.
can't deal with. Yeah.
One thing that a lot of people don't do is hold their cards until they can do duress and cast the spell they want to resolve.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that you should kind of try to do if you can. It's also good against control and flash. It takes Embercleave, so I did put in 2 of them against. Maybe I didn't put in 2 of them against you.
We didn't see one.
I don't think I did actually, because I think I just put in more removal. But you could put it in against things that you can't deal with.
Okay.
Against Elias's, he's playing the same green-white deck that you were playing.
Yep.
So it could take Season of Growth if I
Yeah,
absolutely need to.
The enchantments, the artifacts that you can't deal with, Duress can answer that for you.
Yep, and then I have 2 Soul Guide Lantern, because this is like one of my favorite cards. It's just a cheap way to draw a card, and even if you just draw a card with it, you get some little amount of value. And then obviously you can exile entire graveyard.
Yep. So you're exiling one card, right?
Yeah. So you hold it. They play an Uro. You exile the Uro. Like it gets you a little bit of value. And obviously you can just sit there and hold it and threaten. If they're playing Elspeth Conquers Death, you can just sit there and threaten the graveyard, and they basically get no value out of it.
It's a blowout against the cycling deck.
Yep. So it's there. No one's playing anything here that I want to put it in against, unfortunately. Then I have 2 Cry of the Carnariums. Aggro.
Just say more mass removal. Is that what it is?
Yep. 2 Necromentias.
Why would you play this card?
There's this person that plays these stupid combo decks at Liberty, and he's
Craig,
playing.
Why are you doing that?
I'm dog aggro.
It's me.
Doggro.
It's me.
It's Garrison. He's playing Peer into the. Is it the Abyss?
Peer into the Abyss.
Okay, I keep saying Depths for some reason.
It's Peer into the Abyss with Underworld Dreams.
Yeah. So I just named Peer into the Abyss, and he can't really win.
Yeah, and that's the side that you name, not the other side.
Yeah, I don't really care about the Underworld Dreams because I can just gain life with this deck.
You got enough over here, right?
And obviously I'm not playing blue, but I actually like this better than Unmoored Ego because I can deal with 2/2s really easily.
Yeah.
And I don't really care. 2 Disfigures against aggro.
Okay.
I put him in against Craig for sure.
1 minute spot removal.
Yeah. I think I put him in against Elias too. And then 3 Noxious Grasps, which I didn't even think about putting him in against you in game 2 because I was like, oh, he doesn't play Nissa.
Right.
It's literally the only thing I think about with Noxious Grasp. And I was like, no, it hits almost everything.
Yeah.
It's Winota.
So I do have a couple questions for you. So one thing noticed, your sideboard is actually lately it seems like there's a lot of 1-ofs in people's sideboards, and they're varying mana costs from 1 to 6. I don't like in reality.
I don't need help on the end game.
I was gonna say in reality, your sideboard is all really low, with aside from like 2 very situational, right? Aggro and combo.
Yep.
More or less.
And honestly,
Like
I wouldn't even be
2.
running the Necromentias if you weren't playing Peer.
Right, and that's why I asked. So what would you replace the Necromentias for? Another 1 or 2 mana?
It depends. It depends on your meta. I don't know if this is actually correct.
Okay.
I just really like the card because I was playing it with Luris for a while.
Yeah.
So that's just insanely good there. So I just put it in because it was a way to deal with graveyards.
Now, what about?
Now you could put Luris in.
Would you consider something like Grasp of Darkness?
Yeah, for sure.
You're mono black, right?
Yeah.
Another 2. It's a 2 mana.
Yeah. There's almost
removal?
there's almost no draw where you can't cast it.
Okay.
So that would be a good one you could consider. You could actually consider Luris if you wanted to go like the value train route. Put in like a couple Luris and a couple Soul Guide Lanterns, but you don't really get anything else out of it.
Other than
like
using
the Tomes Exile, so you can't replay them.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, I did notice.
So if you went that route, your sideboard would probably have the Myers Grasp in it. The enchantment.
Oh, the enchantment. Okay. I did also notice you're not playing Massacre Girl.
No.
I
tried
is the 1/1 not enough?
I tried to not play too many cards that rotate.
Okay.
But obviously there's exceptions, like Dread Presence.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of exceptions, right? But, like,
Yeah.
I put the Massacre Worm in, and a lot of it was skipping 5s.
Because you're going from 4 to 6.
Because you're trying to go from 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wondered. It was...
the other reason, too, is that Massacre Worm is asymmetrical, and Massacre Girl can kill my own stuff.
Right.
So I don't have too many creatures to attack with.
Yeah. Okay. I guess one thing I don't think you touched on the point of, so like a lot of people say like you're playing a fair amount of creatures, right?
For me, yes.
And well, and even this deck as a whole for Monoblack control,
It's got 13, I think.
but you're playing 3. What in most instances in any other deck has been a board wipe almost.
Mm-hmm.
But it only hits one of your creatures.
Yeah, it hits Murderous Riders. And you can easily just leave these in the adventure zone.
And they also go back to the deck when they die.
You don't have any shuffle effects. Oh, you have
Solemn.
Dread Presence. You have Lemon.
Solemn Simulacrum.
And you could probably play some number of Fabled Passages.
Replacing...
Just to have shuffle effect.
Okay.
But I don't think I'd want to replace, like, Radiant Fountain. So, like...
Yeah, you got to be careful the number of non-basics.
Like, this rotates, so you could probably replace that and maybe, like, one Swamp and run a couple.
Okay. I think it's interesting to the point of, like, you get to play Ritual Soot, which generally is a board wipe that you want, main deck, because
your real attack creatures or win conditions, or you're dodging the removal spell.
Now, it's something that I prefer to do usually with this, unless you're trying to clear the path. How many times or how often do you think you actually like play a swamp, draw a card, lose a life? You in particular.
20% of the time.
Okay.
I usually shock something.
Is that just trying to keep the board clear? Is that really what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or like if it's late game and I've got like a removal spell or 2 in hand, I don't keep drawing cards. Like if they're out of cards and I'm just trying to close the game out, you want to shock them.
Okay.
Like against Craig, I only had sorcery removal, and I would have, if I had a Dread Presence, I would have been drawing off of it because I would have needed an instant speed removal.
Sure.
Because all he has to do is draw a haste creature and play the cleave he's been sitting on for 16 turns or whatever.
And that's why I asked too, because it's a. I feel like
which play is better?
Well, yeah, it's got 2 very good abilities. That I think are very situational for the deck. Not necessarily even the board situation. Really, you have a ton of removal, so it's not like you're gonna generally need to shock something if you don't have to.
You can run out of removal pretty quick though, because most of it's 1 for 1.
Okay.
Most of it. I mean, you got this. In theory, you've got the Rider, which can remove and come down, and then they just like don't attack into it. And Lemon can trade, but a lot of it's just 1 for 1. So. You can run out. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's going to rotate, unfortunately, unless we get something to replace Dread Presence. I think that's really the engine.
Yeah, this card seems to make the deck really go. It seems like you stumble until you hit.
Yeah.
A Dread
And you
Presence,
could
but then the deck
totally
just
look
takes off.
into playing the new Liliana, because you do put a lot of removal spells in the graveyard. So the new Liliana could it could be a 4-drop. I don't think it replaces Dread Presence. But.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, we're just doing a deck tech Phoenix. Other Phoenix. There's 2 Phoenixes. Yeah, so that's that. I guess we'll stop the YouTube video here. So thanks for watching, YouTube.